Welcome to our brand new online course. I'm Chip Ingram, my friend here, Jim Burns, and we're going to talk about how to navigate life with your adult children. And of course, you know me from Living on the Edge. Jim's been a pastor, author, teacher. He's the founder of Homeward. And Jim, what I love about you is that you wrote this book on doing life with your adult children. And at Living on the Edge, we've gotten so many letters and emails about this topic. And I thought, we've got to help people, but I've got enough issues with my adult children. I wanted to come to an expert. So, Jim, you've got a number of principles that we've taken, what we felt like were the top six that we hear from our audience. And I would just like you to go over those and let's just have a conversation to help the people that are, I think, having at best challenges and at worst some real hard times.
Yeah. Well, that's been my experience too. That actually, the more we think about it, that as our kids get to be adults, they're running parallel journeys. We don't know what we're doing as a parent of an adult child because we've never done that before, and they don't know what they're doing because they've never been an adult before. So the first principle is your role as a parent has to change. In fact, I tell parents, you're fired. Wow. Now, you're fired not as a parent, but you're fired as a day-to-day parent because you've invested 2 decades of your life pretty much in control and focusing on those kids, and now they're leaving. And so what you've got to do is actually help them leave by giving them the passport to adulthood. And I don't think that's easy for them sometimes, and I know it's not easy for us, especially if they're not making those great decisions.
Yeah, I know for me, I was an old coach, pastor, and you know, I have a lot of suggestions. I've got a lot of, hey, this is how you can do it. That did not go over real well. And I realized that, talk about that role, that passport, I had to become a consultant.
Yes.
And that's a very, very different role. How do you launch them? What are specific things you can do to help
Well,
them?
really, I think there is a job description, and I agree with you. It's not easy. I'm the guy who said, so why do they need to go to Europe to find themselves? I have all the answers right here, you know. But if I'm going to do it right, I've got to help them launch them by actually rewriting the script and rewriting the way I do it. And I've been a parent of a child. And even when teens, it was a parent-child relationship. But I think we have to move it to an adult-to-adult relationship. And I find for a lot of parents, they have a trouble there because their kids aren't exactly acting like adults, especially in those emerging, what we call the emerging adult years. But when we do that, that means that in launching them, we have to help them become more independent. And really, they're moving from dependence on you toward independence. We've got to help them do that.
And that, like 18, 19, 20 is, I mean, if they would just act responsible, we could get this down. And yet they are on their own. And so how do you navigate that window of time?
And it's funny that you would say that because my kids would say, well, I'm an adult. And I'd be saying, well, I'm paying for your cell phone. I'm actually paying for your college.
Right.
I think there's an insurance bill that we're popping for. And so it was hard because it was hard to navigate that. Well, I think it's important for us to, as we give them that passport, you know, I think we have to be encouraging, but not intrusive. And we want to be intrusive because a lot of times we have that right answer. I was thinking about somebody who lives up in your area. She's a vice president of a major company up there in the Silicon Valley. And she's 45 years old, has done very well for herself. And her mother said, it's cold outside, honey, put on a coat. And it bothered her. So she said, well, Mom, I think I'm pretty capable of deciding if I'm going to put on the coat. And the mom said, well, I'm your mother. You put on that coat. She's 45 years old. Right. And I said, well, what'd you do? She goes, well, I put on the coat, of course. You know. Right. But again, as a parent, we have to let them experience some of the highs and the lows. And I think we do that in that age level that you're talking about. I learned how to ride a bike because I skinned my knee. And I figured out how to do it. And this is a time period that's really hard for us because if not, there'll be a failure to launch if we just kind of keep doing it for them.
We see that a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, as pastoring for many, many years, I've seen just, you know, the joke of the 30-year-old in the back bedroom who's eating mom's food, mom's doing the clothes, all those, and never grow up. And, you know, Psalm 127, I love this passage. Children are a heritage from the Lord, an offspring of reward. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior, children are born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. And then he talks about they won't be put to shame when they contend to their opponents in the court later. And the idea that our kids are arrows launched toward a target, that there's intentionality, that the real goal isn't that everything is the way you like it, but they actually fulfill the purpose that God has for them.
No, and I think that's hard for us because we like, or at least I liked them being dependent on me. And one of the aspects of that first principle of your role as a parent has to change. For me is, I have to ask the question, am I helping or am I enabling dependency?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's our fault because we still want to be needed and we don't like the role that has now been given us. But when you talk about that scripture and you talk about launching them with arrows, then we have to help them become responsible adults. And isn't that the bottom line? We want our kids to be responsible adults who love God.
Yeah.
And to do that, nobody said it was going to be perfect. In fact, the scripture is very clear that it's not going to be this easy, clear path. There's going to be some bumps and bruises along the way, but they learn through those bumps and bruises. If we enable dependency, then that's more our problem as a parent instead of allowing them to launch and let them experience some of the highs and lows of life. We had to do that.
Yeah, and they have to make some decisions that don't go so well. This sort of emotional or physical or sometimes even financial skinning of their knee.
Yeah.
I have 3 sons and a daughter. They're all grown now, and I'm learning about this, and your book was very, very helpful. But my youngest son loves God, was a very talented musician, but he just, doing his homework was like, he just didn't like school. Right. And so 6 weeks he'd do well, and then he'd just fall off the cliff.
Right.
Well, this was like for 5 years in a row. So he graduates from high school, and he just, I'm going to go to college. And I remember thinking this through. I'm a pastor, and I'm thinking, okay, wait a second. This isn't my money. This is God's money.
Right.
And I sit down with him, and I say, you've never put 2 6 weeks together, so I'm going to pay $10,000 a semester. And when I'm on you here, you don't do it. And so I did something. I said, son, this may sound cruel, but you can work for a year. I'll give you a very low rent. In fact, I'll take all the money and I'll put it towards your college. But you need to come up with $10,000 and work for the next year. So you pay for that first semester. And then if you do well, we'll jump in it together. And he did landscaping, and then he did window tinting. Right. And then after about 6 months, he said, Dad, I got news for you. I'm going to college. Now, those are good jobs, but he realized I really need to become responsible. And I talked till I was blue in the face, but that experience is what taught him it. Yeah. And he eventually did very well.
Well, experience is a better teacher than advice. Each child is different along the way. Yeah. And when we do that, we have to look at each individual and say what is best for them to help them launch to become a responsible adult. There's an element of it, too, in that when we let them go, that there is a sense of loss. Yeah. I find a lot of parents, and I'm in the same place you are. I have 3 daughters, so of course we had no hormones or drama in our life. But I have 3 daughters who are now, launched, and yet there was a sense of loss for us. Our identity was around those kids, and now that we're launching them, we had to almost grieve the fact that we're in a different phase, even though it's a great phase.
Yes. I would say, too, it is often very different for the woman that is the man, and being on the same page about launching. Yeah. My wife intellectually understood that our son has to be responsible, or sending him to college is not a good plan. Mm-hmm. Her head got that, her heart didn't. No. It's embarrassing for him. Right. How can you do this? Yeah. I said, well, we either can protect him or we can help him grow up. Right. And sometimes helping people grow up is hard.
No, exactly right. As the role changes, we have to get as physically, emotionally, and spiritually healthy together. And I actually think sometimes for people who are married, and I realize there's a lot of single parents out there, but for people who are married, one of the most important things is that they get on the same page. They make some of those decisions. Now, again, we're never going to be totally on the same page. Kathy and I are on the same page, and we write books on parenting, okay, and marriage. That's what's funny. But the point being is the more you can be united, the better. And so it really does take some time and effort. And I didn't think it was going to be as complicated as they became young adults and adults. And it is complicated, and it was complicated for Kathy and I to work on ourselves. But when we work on our own self, somebody once said to me, untended fires soon become nothing but a pile of ashes. Mm-hmm. And I realized that during a season, even when our kids were teens, we weren't tending the fire within our own souls, and we weren't tending the fire within our own marriage souls enough. Yeah. And so we had to kind of do some course corrections in order to help those kids launch.
I guess what I hear now is we have to go from adult child to adult to adult. We need to give them a passport. It's really important for the mom and the dad to be on the same page. And then I think you really need to realize it's going to be messy. There's no clean way where this happens. And I will tell you that to dig in a little bit deeper, this book has been really helpful. My kids are really grown, and I'm still wrestling with a number of these things. So let me encourage you, dig into those questions and ask God to show you how to give your child the launch that he or she needs.